Hey ho, how goes everybody? Welcome back to Frivolous Gravitas. For you, my dear listeners, my dearest brothers and sisters of the internet, we gather here today with His Eminence Jordan Roy and myself, the pseudo-affable Christopher Driver, to discuss the subject of beauty. We are often sympathetic to the ideas of beauty in nature and life, from music and paintings and sculptures to mathematical expressions, to sport, yada yada. So in all those things, we find beauty in such a variety of places. So today we're going to try to dissect its meanings and applications. We're going to try to identify its points of depths and shallows and try to figure out why and where beauty is being disregarded or degraded in modern times. So with that, I'll let Jordan take it away and see where we want to go from here.
Yeah, so that's a very beautiful intro.
Oh, thank you.
Father Driver.
I have wonderful cuffs.
So this is a topic that's actually gaining a bit of gaining a bit of traction in the talkosphere, the idea river that's passing through all our brains, and it's something I've been interested in as long as I've been studying stuff, but it's always something that I've noticed that I've been drawn to. Now, this isn't like, oh, Jordan's drawn to things that are beautiful. No, this is something that we're all drawn to. So beauty is something that is very, very important into all of our lives. And it's definitely evident that in the last 100 or so years, and to a greater extent in the last, 40 or so years, we've just been rejecting beauty as a thing that is necessary in our lives. I think there's the thing to this is that beauty exists on its own, and this is a lie essentially, because beauty doesn't exist separate from anything. Beauty exists as a property of something, and it's not something that we understand very well, or even can just point out like, oh, that's beauty, which we can do, but then you ask yourself, well, why is it beauty? Because it is beautiful. And this can go for a lot of things. But for the most part, beauty isn't something that is just inherent to an object. It's something that the object has as a property to it. Because not every object has beauty, and it doesn't have beauty in every context. So when we get back to this lie that beauty is separate from quality that we find in nature from us, and we can just apply it to things, or that it's created culturally, which I guess would be the second lie of beauty, that it is something that we can apply to it, whereas it is definitely something more that happens to us in spite of ourselves, rather than something that we can just find when we redefine something. And this is definitely, so that first lie was that beauty is something separate from us. And the second is that it's a cultural construction, essentially. And these happen at different times. The first one happens about 100 years ago, when they just start to reject beauty as the focus of art. You've got people like Marcel Duchamp, who, he was told to make an art project, so he just wrote like Our Mutt 1917 on a lavatory and handed it in, and they're like, what is this? And it has no beauty. The act itself is beautiful in a way, because it's just this act of, rebellion, but or just general like curmudgeon.
What was he trying to articulate with that, though, do you think?
Well, I think he's, and this is...
maybe you could describe the piece a little better for...
Yeah, so it's Fountain 1917 by Marcel Duchamp. It's literally just a urinal with a name on it, written in 1917. So he literally just took a urinal, put it on a pedestal, and called it art. So...
he put the pisser on the pedestal.
Yeah. So this is the idea of anti-art, and it was a rebellion against the art world, which had been focused almost, and this was almost like a rightful rebellion, because everyone's very focused on the representational art, the symbolic art, the impressionist art, these arts that are trying to portray the beauty of a situation or the beauty of an emotion or the beauty of a idea in art form. And this comes at the same time that you start getting atonal music, about 10 years after, as well as the weird experimental music that really rejects the idea of beauty in favor of like clinical mechanical purity and mechanical experimentation, which has its own place, but it doesn't really have that. Like atonal music was intentionally not beautiful. It was meant to make you feel uneasy in your seat and just be like, I don't like this, but it's like, yes, but this is art. Okay. So we get this slow rejection of beauty, but the problem is that people don't respond well to beauty. Our reaction to beauty happens in spite of ourselves. We don't have really a choice on this. When we encounter something that's beautiful, what happens is we react in I would say it's like a pleasurable way. Like we get that wonder and pleasure. It's like, whoa. So when you turn the corner and all of a sudden there's a gorgeous garden there, and you're just like, oh, that's actually really nice. Now the cynical in us would be like, yeah, but it's all gonna die. It's like, okay, calm down. But like, it's happening to us in spite of ourselves. That nuministic feeling, which we talked about a couple episodes ago, that encounter with forces we can't comprehend or define. We encounter this nuministic force, beauty, and we say, that's beautiful. So this is where it leads me into one of the sorry, I talk too much, as you can tell by the amount of content we have on this channel. So
maybe you can describe a little bit why you think it is that beauty is so hard to articulate. Because obviously, like, it's not just you struggling here. This is like everybody trying to describe things like life or enjoyment or betterment or fulfillment. Like, these types of concepts are really hard for us to put into words and communicate.
Yeah.
Especially with something like beauty, where like a gun can be beautiful, a child can be beautiful, a sexual experience can be beautiful.
If done right.
A religious experience could be beautiful, like music can be beautiful. Like, there's so many things that we ascribe beauty to. Why is it so hard to articulate if everything has some type of beauty potential?
So let's keep this quote in mind, and then we'll go on to a definition to answer your point. I am answering your question because it's a good point. Oh, excuse me. I'm just the first is that beauty and truth are the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin when you're looking at beauty. And this is important. So you go back to Keats and his poem, Ode to a Grecian Urn, where at the end of his poem, he says, "Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know." So at the end of this poem, he's describing a whole bunch of stuff: stars, the spring, wild ecstasy, sylvan historians, and dales of Arcady. And so he's describing all this, but in the end, he just comes to the conclusion that beauty is truth and truth is beauty. Now, this is it sounds like it's like, whoa, it's deep, beauty and truth are the same thing, but then you're just leaving it at that, not explaining why. So that's like, you need to actually dive into this and not just go lol deep, because it is deep, but there is a lot here in these two lines, and even in just this one line, because ye know on earth and all ye need to know. So he's essentially saying that there's something important here with this poem. There is something very important here in reality that you need to look at, and that is beauty is truth and truth beauty. So
see how somebody might misinterpret that though, right? Like if they find a person beautiful and they fall in lust with them, they might confuse it with love. So I think that's part of the complication to the poetry, the sort of double meaning, in the sense that it's true in a poem about things that are, often deceiving us in regular everyday life.
Right. So one of the so to unpack this, I think is one of the it's a quote that I came across from I think it was James. Yeah, it was James Lindsay a couple of weeks ago, was talking about beauty in particular, which is why I say a lot of people are talking about this now, because everyone's starting to look at beauty as a thing that is necessary to our lives, which it is. Why do you think when we present totalitarian regimes, we present them with gray, smoggy smokestacks and, cut and paste tenements lining a highway? It's just like there's no beauty in these things. So we when we think of something idyllic, where do you want to live? I want to live somewhere that has some beauty to it. I don't want to live in this tenement. So when he's saying that he was saying in a podcast, and I absolutely loved it. He said essentially that beauty is that which excels at what it intends to be. And he didn't come up with this out of the blue. But before I move on, let's look at that. So beauty excels at what it intends to be. So if you are that object of lust that the young man is looking at, he's looking at a woman, an object of sexual desire. But why is he not looking at, say, the woman next to her, or, her friend, or, why isn't he going on the internet looking at someone else? Well, the girl on the internet is a representation. Maybe the girl behind the counter is not enjoying her day, and she's not fully herself. She's not being her true self at that moment, and she's just getting to the end of the day. The other girl is exhilarant in what she is doing. She made herself up. She is the most woman she could be at that moment. And she is the most truly who she is at that moment. And therefore, she is excelling at being what she is intending to be. This brings us, this is a good example of what is meant by beauty is truth and truth beauty, because you can't, something that is not in accordance, I guess we have to get into truth now. I'm defining truth here as something that is in line with the reality of nature. And this kind of goes along with that. We've talked about this before in our Buddhist lectures. Also, I think we talked about it a bit in Trust, where you have your Dharma, or you're following your Tao, or you are, no, the Christians literally just call this truth. The truth of God, which is, well, what is God? Well, God is this guy in the sky. No, it's too small. Well, God is this guy who created the universe. No, too small. Well, God is the universe. Too small. And so if God is some aspect of the universe, then you should be going in accordance with it. And this is kind of the same thing. Now, I'm not pulling this out of my butt. This is C.S. Lewis in his series of papers, I think in his paper Mere Christianity, details, and he goes into, he's deeply spiritual guy, because he's not just talking about Christianity. He's saying there's elements of what Christianity is trying to be in these other religions. And he goes deeply into this notion of the Tao, and he says it's the same thing that Christianity is trying to do. So this following of the way being the truth of how the world works. So if you try to if you're trying to live your life in a way that nature doesn't, that isn't in accord with the literal mechanics of nature, you're going to have a bad time. And so anything that does follow this ends up somehow being beautiful, which is why nature ends up being beautiful, which is why the woman who has successfully engaged herself in being, an object of sexual desire is beautiful, because she is what she is intending to be. Now, this doesn't come out of nowhere. James Lindsay didn't pull this out of nowhere. People have been thinking about this. This isn't a new idea. These ideas are very old, because things have always been beautiful. We have always been struck by the beauty of things. And we're going to go back to Greece now, as we always seem to do, because those guys sat down and did their homework. And the notion of arete is one that the Greeks came up with specifically. It shows up in Homer. Plato and Aristotle talk about it. And what it essentially means in Greek is excellence of any kind. So this also could be, if you're watching this from another cultural viewpoint, this could be similar to the idea of kung fu, in which, you practice excellence through repetition. So, and kung fu ends up being very beautiful, which is why we make kung fu movies and we watch kung fu movies, because kung fu, the martial aspect of it, ends up being beautiful when done right. Even if it's like a comedy movie, I don't know, Kung Fu Hustle or something, and it's just the way they move is still
the choreography is like a dance almost.
It is. Or you get something like capoeira, which ends up, this martial dance, which ends up still being very fun to watch. But even a dancer has to practice, has to attain excellence before we look upon their offerings as something that is beautiful. Because you can just go out on the dance floor and move, and there's value in that. You moving with the flow, the Tao of the room. And so you find your own beauty in the movement of that. But from the outside, someone's going to be like, oh, they're just flailing around. There's only a limited amount of beauty. But when your movements are so in tune with, the music, the group, like in a waltz, where everyone in their pairs, so you're in accordance with the person in front of you, you're enacting the true flow or whatever of the dance, and then all the other group with the other person in your pair, and then like solar systems, everyone's kind of roaming around each other in the waltz, and they're all kind of going around, and they're not hitting each other, and then the music is being played beautifully, and then all of a sudden all this coming together, and everyone has been, you have this confluence of excellence coming together, and you're looking at this waltz and the people dancing to it, and you're like, this is beautiful. There is beauty here. So this idea of
do you mind if I chip at that for a second?
Yeah.
One of the things that kind of gets complicated in my mind when we discuss things like aesthetics and beauty is when you refer it to truth or excellence, it sort of negates half of all the beauty in the world, if not more, in my opinion. Because that sort of brushes aside the beauty of people playing music poorly, but having a communion, like being with all your best friends in a room and just jamming. It might sound like crap, but like the situation and the experience of having that type of camaraderie is beautiful in and of itself.
Yeah, and that's
or like
kind
kids
of
playing, right?
But that's not you excelling at playing music. That's you guys excelling and at being in tune with each other and being, friendship and you get together and you're all jamming in your garage or something, and it sounds just like any other garage band, but then you're enjoying it and you're all being like, yeah, this is great. The beauty isn't in the music. The music is facilitating the beauty of the friendship and the action. You guys are truly, this is going to sound hokey, but you guys are truly friends. That the friendship you are trying to enact and
Express.
express, thank you, is what it is. There's no lies to it. You guys aren't, there's no place when that beauty is happening for someone being like, oh, we could be better, because you're just doing it. It's just happening. And
so the truth isn't in the thing that it is, it's in the environment or in the meta thing that it is, right?
Right. And when more than one thing comes together at a time, you're in a room that is gilded, and there's so much artistry in the room, and it is the most excellent room you've ever seen. I don't know, Versailles or something. And then everyone gets in and starts to dance, and there's an orchestra, and you have multiple layers of excellence: the excellence of the music, the excellence of the dancers, the excellence of the artistic aesthetic of the place. These are all coming together, and that's when you get like an experience. I felt this at my wedding, actually. It's everything came together. Family, heck, even the DJ was great. I didn't even give him that many, but like everything came together, and it was a beautiful day. And because we were all there honestly to do something in honesty that allowed I don't know, it wasn't the most extravagant thing, but it still was excellent in its own way.
So what about transposing that to something like a song that's perfectly played that you don't enjoy? Like, what's the beauty in a perfectly played bad song?
I think that would be the beauty of Kung Fu. This person who's spent their time, the beauty of that person's approach to the music.
You see what I'm getting at? It's not immediately recognizable just by default, right?
No, and I think, and I don't even think I've explained this idea of beauty of truth as well, because I'm connecting it to the idea that you are placing yourself, because it's in tune with you're placing yourself in tune with nature, and that is a odd concept, because we assume that in our society, essentially, we assume that we can create something. I'm going to find something new or something but that this assumption of beauty is truth, and my definition of what is meant here by truth presupposes that there are things that are inherently ugly in the world, especially to humans. We do see the world as humans, so a tar pit will definitely not be something that we will want to engage with, because it has an ugly smell, it has an ugly aspect. There is very little about it that I would find beautiful, but at the same time, and like, I don't find discordant music beautiful intentionally. Like, I don't listen to, I don't know,
that screaming metal or
yeah, but like metal in itself, like there is good metal out there.
Yeah, but some of it's a lot of amelodic.
Yeah, and they don't follow like
and it's just distortion, so you can't hear the notes on the guitar or any of the harmonies. There are none sometimes.
Yeah, and good metal is like, good metal bands are masters of the flow of their own, like it's power. They're playing with powerful music, and so, but you can't just have like punch somebody in the ears with their music. It has to have a flow to it. It has to have, lulls and goes. So you're almost conducting that feeling with metal, which is why good metal is good, because you're just sitting there and you're just going like, yeah, this is great, I'm hyped up. And then you're just like, it gives you a moment to breathe. It gives you a moment to breathe. And then it just was like, explodes into your brain, and you're like, yeah, and you feel like you're going Super Saiyan or something. And then the song ends and you're just like, that was awesome. That's the experience that they're trying to portray. But bad metal will just be like, all right, let's just punch him in the face repeatedly with this music. It's like, oh, Jesus, no subtlety to it. And so,
But that's entirely subjective and not a truth, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, I'm kind of making an argument against pure subjectivism here, because, okay, when we were kids, I remember, well, specifically me, when I was a kid, I would gravitate towards things that could give me certain feelings, like music. I'd be like, okay, this is good. I like it. It just hypes, pumps me up. But then I wouldn't really, I'd be looking for the pump up. I wouldn't be looking for the thing that made the pump up work. So you'd be looking for something that would give you that, like, the end, and not, but the
No
the
foreplay.
reasons. Yeah, there's no foreplay. And yes, that is exactly the perfect example, because you want the release. You do not want the thing that makes the to put the work in, because you're immature and you don't understand that the thing is only good because you did all that prep work to make it that good. And you find this out through experimentation and practice, and then you get good at playing your instrument or finding stuff, or
See, I find it in
anything
music
really.
in so many different places. Like for me, the rhythm of a drum is insanely beautiful just by its timing. So like the timing function of hitting snares and toms and cymbals, to me, is just really beautiful, even though it's basically the same tone in short snaps over and over and over again. And then
Right.
I relate that to other music I listen to, which will be like string symphonies. I absolutely love big, rich, hearty string symphonies.
Yeah.
And to that, it's like the tremolos and it's the pacing, but it's not the same type of timing function as a drum, even though it has drums in the percussion section. So like,
Right.
it's weird to me how like the beauty aspect of music morphs around the type of music you're trying to orchestrate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's unique to beauty, is that it can relate to so many different things, but only in certain ways does it relate to certain things.
Right. And like, it's strange how when you listen to something like, I don't know, Tchaikovsky, you look at his 1812 overture and this is a battle. Like, there's no, like, you don't even have to be told. That there is a life and death struggle happening in this music. And then you look at the background of it and you're like, that's exactly what this is. And the cannons fire and you're just like, whoa, it blows you over. But then you go to something like,
But like even choir hymns, like you've got a
yes,
whole group of imperfect singers, but when they're all together, they sound like absolutely astonishingly beautiful.
yes,
I think that's a good example of where you can sort of amalgamate a whole bunch of imperfections and create something that's on the whole greater than the sum of its parts.
mm-hmm.
Sort of a synergy for beauty.
Yeah, and it's not, and the choir is, a good example of this, because we found out we just found out somehow forever ago that if we put a bunch of people together, then you get something that sounds really, really good. And so people have always sung, because music is part of who we are.
It's also how we pass down traditions and knowledge and information. Before we had books and the internet, we had only music to remember things and pass them down to other generations.
Well, that's why like hip hop works so well, and because it's essentially poetry, and that's why poetry is so deep, because
good hip hop works well.
good hip hop, there's a lot of bad hip hop. The ratio to good and bad
it's
is
not a rhyme to repeat the same word over and over again, just making a point.
Yeah. But the original like songs came from poetry, because words have their own words are lyrical in themselves, which is why poetry works, because I'm using this terrible repetition and alliteration here. But we're almost programmed to see this in a certain way, because we used to transmit information via rhyme and meter, because for some reason the brain is wired to remember stuff in a lyrical format. It's like that's the file format that our brain saves stuff in, and so
What's evolution mostly, I think.
It is. Oh, it is. But like a lot of the ancient holy books like, Homer, you get a lot of the Vedas, they're all done in verse. Well, why? Because we can remember, we strangely can remember things that are very, very well and very, very accurately through rhyme. And it's, it's like, oh, it's like when I tell myself, it's like, I remember it by rhyming, making a rhyme for my notes. It's like, no, it's way more powerful than that. Because, and like everyone says that, oh, the Native Americans, they did this. It's like, of course they did. We all did this. Before we had, external memory of, writing, that's how we remembered stuff. And it was the best tool we had for thousands and thousands of years because it worked. And these oral traditions could be transcribed, and they're now more accurate because they're on paper, but it's still the essence of these stories didn't change, because we were able to use that lyrical quality, that almost like practical beauty, in order to keep them going, because people like beauty, they're drawn to it. So when something's beautiful, they'll want to see it, they'll want to remember it, they want to capture it. And so we beauty is almost an evolutionary tool, but it's still beauty. When we objectively, it's, when you look at it objectively, it doesn't really lose much of its luster, but it's still, and just because I'm explaining it doesn't, I guess, I hate how there's this assumption in society where when you explain something scientifically or objectively, it's like it loses its magic. No, the magic is still there. The subjective magic isn't going to go away just because I understand the objective necessity to it, or because I'm exploring the objectivity of it.
That's sort of how I feel about the sciences and maths and stuff. Because I mean, like with music, especially, a lot of what we hear as harmonious, melodic, or beautiful comes down to just scales and fractions and ratios between two notes and semitones, and with pacing, it's usually you cut them in half or down to thirds. Like there's certain ratios that really resonate with our minds that we describe as beautiful. But like, is beauty really natural? Like, is it a requirement that we understand and appreciate beauty in nature for us to have evolved to become more social or empathetic creatures? Or like, is beauty required to understand love? Is music a necessary component to our humanity, or is it just sort of like a bonus, like an abstract leftover from evolution?
I don't think it's necessary to understand it, but I think beauty is a more of a and this is almost, I think it's more of a quality of the stimulus, kind of like pain. Pain is a signal in your body that something's wrong. Pleasure is usually a sign that something's right. But pleasure is poorly calibrated in our society because,
it's an imperfect system, but
it's an imperfect system. But beauty is usually a sign that something is good. Something is right. Now, you see something like a flower. Now, flowers look different to bugs. It's like, but bugs respond to things that have color with them. They evolved color in a flower because they attracted things that had rudimentary eyes that could see certain parts of the spectrum. So if you want to attract a certain bug, you'll the ones that'll make it will be the flowers that that particular bug or bee or whatever can see. It'll reflect light in the wavelength that bug can see in. So all of a sudden we get these like elaborately colorful flowers because the bugs and the bees go towards things that they're attracted to. Beauty. This is natural beauty. This is the evolutionary aspect of it. Now we do the same thing. If you have a desert on your left, and a lush forest on your right, a green forest on your right, which one are you likely to go explore first?
Probably the green forest.
Yeah, because there's gonna your brain says, "Oh, it's beautiful," but then your mind will say, "Why is it beautiful? Well, it's probably got more food. I can sharpen a stick on a rock, and go. There's probably
Shelter.
if there's shelter. There's all this stuff. I can thrive in this environment." And if you go into the desert, you got people like, "Well, I actually would go to the desert." You are lying. You are lying because you are being cynical. Grow up.
But it also comes down to like where you grew up, because like being born in a desert, it might give you nostalgia, and there might be some type of beauty in the way the sand dunes have sand.
Definitely.
And
a Bedouin will understand the desert. You get desert power, but like a Bedouin will know, like as a Canadian, like please, I'll take Canadian Shield for 20 Alex, but like a Bedouin will understand how to live in the desert and will probably thrive in that situation, but they're still gonna want like, okay, but can I have the desert by the shore or near a river? And because you see like a river is a beautiful thing,
but there's still that subjective aspect to it, where like watching the flows of sand dunes or the flows of a river, or like the jagged rocks and peaks and valleys of mountainscapes, like all that kind of stuff is, I think anyway, this is just personal opinion,
no, you're right though,
develop a sense of beauty around the environment that they were able to grow and be nourished in. So not necessarily that there is a truthful beauty or one is more beautiful than the other. It's the reason it's subjective, I think, is because we learn beauty part and parcel to beauty. It's not just all intrinsic to nature.
Right. But I think
like learning to appreciate a type of music like jazz. I find it really hard to listen to jazz. I'm sure it's very good, but
there is an element of that, but I think one of the things I bring up nature so much is that, sorry, it's hard to talk this long, like when I talk for a living elsewise. One of the things about nature is that all of it is beautiful. Strangely, we can find beauty in a volcano. Definitely volcanoes are an exception to my theory there, but I would posit that all nature in itself has aspects of beauty to it, because beauty is truth. Nature cannot be anything but what it is. And when we are encountering that, we are seeing a true thing as it is, no matter what. And so when you look out into space, when you look into nature, when you see pictures from space, and it's contrasted by the gnarly arm of the space telescope or whatever, but then you see like the curve of everything and something about the geometry of this, something, nuts to all that. It's numismatic. You might conclude. It's like, I'm not gonna dissect it, but there's that nature is truth. Nature is the truth that we must live in. Like, it isn't, true to itself. It is the truth. There's nothing but nature. And okay, yeah, but there's, other dimensions. Well, no, that's part of nature. Well, I believe in heaven and hell. I guess that's also nature. Well, what about anything beyond the universe? How is that not existence? Like, you can't separate things that are from things that aren't. The only thing that isn't is the abstract concepts in our imagination, which tend to be beautiful in themselves too. But at the same time, you have human creations which end up being ugly to a lot of the time. So, sorry, it was a bit of a misstep there on my part. Now, I don't know why this is, but at the same time, it's evident that when you look at something like a forest or a mountain or an ocean, there's beauty to that. But when you look at an industrial section of a city, there's very little beauty of that. There's no trees. Trees are for some reason beautiful. Maybe because they are part of nature. They are an aspect of that natural world which we understand and evolved in. But a corrugated steel shelter doesn't have much beauty into it. Now it's excelling at being what it is, but beyond that, it's just a building that services as a shelter for the machinery and the noise, the clanking, the smell of industry, which I'm not decrying, but it lets. But most people will agree that it's not something that they would generally prefer to look at than a river valley or say something like that.
In keeping with what you were saying, then that steel shelter could be considered beautiful to somebody in, like, say, the Bronze Age, who where metal was very rare. So a thing of beauty might be a well-refined or smelted bronze shelter or something like that, because of its sturdiness and its resilience to the natural whims of destruction that nature provides.
Yeah, I'm inclined to disagree because they can find utility doesn't equal beauty.
But as a saving grace, it would be something beautiful to them. Like, they made huge bronze statues, and now today we don't make them because they're ugly. Because bronze isn't a big deal when you've got like alloys left, right, and center, and everywhere you look. But
well, we still, like, a lot of people still make bronze statues. Like if you go to the garden, I guess the Royal Garden, there's a garden in Winnipeg which has a lot of the bronze statues of a Winnipeg artist.
I'm not saying they don't exist. What I'm saying is there was a time when that was the epitome of beauty, was a bronze statue. That was the thing you build to make a statue because it was beautiful.
Well, those statues were the representations of usually the gods or some ideal form of something, and the thing being represented matters too. So if you is like the only thing you're representing, and now I'm to get in, I don't know how much I want to get into that, because I want to get back to this idea of utility. Utility and beauty can coincide, and when they do, you get something like a
well, that's what math is, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, math is like that, but like something like a car. I don't find my car beautiful. I find it very useful, and I like the fact that it gets me around, but I don't think it's a thing of beauty. Far from it, but I don't care. Now you get something like I don't know, a Ferrari or something, or a Porsche, which melds that. Now, yes, they are more expensive. Deal with it, and they are trying to meld utility with beauty because they are separate. And I don't need my spade to be beautiful. Like I would almost want it not to be beautiful, because a thing of beauty is a joy. But the other thing about that is that a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Keats also, because it should be able to be seen at any time by people as beautiful. And so, like, back then they would have thought it was beautiful, but no, it would have been something that could have that quality across, that objective quality of beauty to anybody that perceives it. So, and this is kind of why I also reject, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm answering your question very well, but I kind of want to follow this thread. Maybe ask it again after. Is that I'm also hesitant to rely on just purely subjectivism, because across cultures, when a culture has created something beautiful, other cultures have come in, looked at it, and went, okay, that's beautiful. Something you like, Europeans go to China and they see Chinese architecture, they see Japanese aesthetic achievements, or heck, even those big Easter Island heads that are on the seashore. They're just like, that is very interesting. There's something special about this. We should leave it. And
But is majesty alone enough to make something beautiful? Like the depiction of the item, is that enough to make it beautiful even if it's ugly on its own?
How so? Like
For example,
if I'm depicting a sorry, go on.
Oh, for example, then, like, with clothes, some people think that certain clothes are really beautiful, and there are a lot of fashion designers out there making a lot of clothes that look absolute garbage to me, but other people pay thousands of dollars for it, like Gucci and Prada, and Ugg boots were a thing. Like, everybody bought Ugg boots, and they just look absolutely ridiculous to me.
Yeah. Now, again, Ugg boots.
They weren't functional either, but
I'm led to believe that Ugg boots were very comfy.
Until your ankles give out.
Yeah, until your ankles give out. But like, again, that's utility. And this is the same thing when you start looking at the form of the art rather than the result of the art. So if you are trying to be like, oh, this is going to be the hardest symphony to play ever, haha, I'm such an artist. It's like, no, you're a mathematician at that point. Yeah. You are working in the jargon of your field. You're not working with the end of your field. And it's the same with you find this in every field, where they think the means is the end. And we're not talking about justification here, but the means of doing it. So, I'm playing the piano, and they mix up the result, the thing you're trying to do with the piano, the tool, with the thing you can do with the piano. So Mozart was good because he was a master, and so that, like, his ability was beautiful in itself. But then with that mastery, he was able to create, like, look what I can do with this, and then you get Mozart. And with fashion, you get people going like, well, what if I did this? Well, what if I made it differently? They're intentionally trying to just create difference at times. But sometimes you get someone who really understands it and makes a really, really nice suit. And it. You look at it and be like, I've never seen that before. I love it.
But that's sort of what I'm trying to ask you. Like, there's a non-locality to it, the subjectivity point of it. Like, is it that you have to teach somebody to appreciate it in order for them to see the beauty? Because if there's an element of truth to it and something is true, then somebody should be able to learn that it is true and thusly learn that it's beautiful.
I think education only serves to enhance the experience of the beauty. So you listen to a symphony and you're just like, this is touching me. Like, you listen to Beethoven for the first time, you listen to Tchaikovsky for the first time, and you're just like, oh, this is hitting me hard. I've never heard anything like this. It's beautiful. But then you study music for a bit and you're like, this is not only beautiful, but it is clever, and you understand how the beauty comes. And now the other thing is that you can listen to these things more than once. There's enough beauty in there to listen to it over and over and over and over and over again. And as you listen to it and you educate yourself on what it is, you find more and more and more beauty in it.
So that necessarily states that if something is true and somebody else doesn't, or something is beautiful and somebody else doesn't see it, that you can teach it into them. You can drive it home and force them to see that it's beautiful at some point eventually.
Maybe.
Given sufficient information.
We are all different, so we're all going to be interested in different things. Some people are going to be drawn to different types of beauty. But at the same time,
that's sort of where I don't understand how truth fits in with beauty, is because of the subjectivity portion. If it were,
I think a lot of people,
you can teach it.
I think a lot of people are also lying to themselves about what they like and don't like. If someone doesn't like a forest.
No, but like breakdancing. How many old people watch breakdancing beats or like scratching competitions with turntables and stuff? A lot of people think that it's absolutely beautiful music or dance, but if it's outside of somebody's cultural norm or what they were raised with, it's harder for them to appreciate it and thus see the beauty in it, even if they can hear it and see it the same as anybody else.
So I think it's worth setting up a hierarchy here. Oh no, here I come with my hierarchy. But I think the hierarchy should lie along universality lines. There are things that are universally beauty to to humanity, and there's things that seem to be universally beauty across species too. Like I said, bugs seem to love flowers, so they must have some element of attraction to them.
But it comes down to other things like poetry and art, right? If you don't understand the language, it's not likely you're going to hear it as beautiful. Or if you don't, sorry, I'm trying to think of another example. Like, it's not self-evident, I don't think, that it is a truth behavior or relationship between beauty and truth. I fail to see how something that's even universally perceived as beautiful, how that's not just subjective to our biology. Like, what's the underlying truth to it if we're talking about universalities with it? Do you know what I mean? Like mathematical, Einstein's field equations mean nothing if you don't understand how to do.
I don't think there is a truth. I think it is the truth that we're seeing, a part of the truth of what is.
Yeah, so like if an equation then describes something in nature that is absolutely true, like the truest thing that we could possibly know is math, and it's an abstraction, and we find a beautiful solution to an equation, if somebody doesn't understand how to do the math, they won't appreciate why it's beautiful. It'll just look like symbols and Greek letters on a page, right?
To me, that's not like that. The fact that math is beautiful. To me, I can't see that. I literally can't see it. So I need to get the eyes of mathematics into my head before I can see it. I literally can't see the beauty in math, because I can't see math. And people can. That doesn't mean the beauty isn't there. It just means I personally, Jordan Roy, can't see it. Plus, if I read a book and I find beauty in the book, or if I find beauty in the poem, and I find it, that means I've seen it. That doesn't mean everyone can see it, but I can teach everyone to see it. That doesn't. The beauty is still there. You just kind of have to. You have to have the right faculties. Now, it's the same as looking into space. We couldn't see the beauty of the universe until we, took the blind off with the Hubble Space Telescope. And then all of a sudden we're seeing all this, like, we didn't know. Like, we thought space was just this black mat with a couple dots in there. But there's gases and galaxies and nebula, and it's gorgeous. It's like but now it's sublime, there to top it off. But we couldn't see it before. We didn't even know the beauty was there before, and now we do. So yes, to some extent, it is. There is some subjective element, but just because I can't perceive it or I don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Yeah.
But I guess sort of what I'm getting at is if there's something that all humans perceive to be beautiful and something that all wasps perceive to be beautiful and something that all ants perceive to be beautiful, is it not more subject to our nature rather than universality? Is beauty not just our thing rather than a thing?
Oh, I'm arguing both, actually. I'm arguing that it's both subjective and objective. There is an objective aspect to this subjective experience of beauty. Oh yeah, it's completely subjective.
Are they two parts of the same dipole though? Like, is beauty one thing and then there's subjective beauty and like a magnet where there's bipolarity, or is it like they're two of the same thing just described differently? Do you think?
Let me put it this way, because I don't know if I want to use that metaphor particularly. There's a little fluff here. So there's beauty that humans can see, and there's things that are beautiful to humans, and they're not going to be beautiful to like say wasps or bees, although we both seem to like flowers. Wasps seem to like being jerks. So, there's a difference there.
Bees are just passive aggressive.
There's definitely things that are beautiful to dogs and cats that humans don't find beautiful. That's obvious.
Smelling their own poo.
Yeah. Well, or like dogs will go like ape shit over things that we just like, it's a ball, dude. So, but I'd say that the subjective aspect, the thing that drives these subjective encounters with beauty in animals across the spectrum is the same thing. That there's something about that thing objectively that triggers our subjective feeling of beauty. And I think that's what I'm trying to get into, or trying to get across, is that it's objectively informed, but subjectively encountered. So a human's going to think that one thing, but I think that across humanity, as long as you're, there are things that more beauty is more universal than not in humanity, I would say. Within Homo sapiens, I think is what I'm trying to get across. Because as far as we can see, we've been trying to capture the same things in beauty all across human history. You go to Egypt and India and China, and they've been trying to figure out beauty in their own ways. And then when we show it to, one culture will show their homework to another culture, and the other culture will be like, yeah, that's good. And then they copy it and they bring it into their culture, which is why, the Middle East is just this amalgam of everything, because it's this crossroads. And you have these different, like you go to Spain and you see Muslim, you see the Alhambra, and you go in there and it's this giant castle that they built 600-700 years ago and during the Reconquista. The Grenada, they built this giant palace, which was gorgeous. It's got tiles and it's got all this filigree, and it's got all these like mosaics everywhere, and it's just gorgeous. It's not the gorgeous that my culture has, but I can still think it's beautiful because there's some sublime aspect to it that reflects the truth of the universe, is what I guess I would say, using the arguments I'm trying to get across in this. But if I was there, I'd probably just look up it and go, wow, because there's nothing else I could say. But at the same time, you go to, you look at you go to the Forbidden City, or you go to the, like in China, or you go to some of the architectural masterpieces in Japan with their aesthetic focus on spiritualism, and there's beauty everywhere. And I think when it comes down to it, it's the same as when I was talking about how like a pencil works, or this. There's infinite variety in a non-infinite amount of form. And the form is so vast. The form is nature, but we can create this variety of beautiful objects and art, but there's not an infinite variety of things that we are going to find beautiful. Well, I think that's...
Just to say then, I think you're putting it very well. For the record, I'm trying to pick it apart, not because I'm trying to contest your arguments, but I'm trying to evoke just a deeper or more thorough exploration of the ideas that we're discussing. Just for the record,
no,
everybody else.
And I think that did force me to put it a little better. So
so what I wanted to get at then is to also ask you, like along those same veins, and the reason why I'm prodding is because I think you're getting to something like really crucial to the fundamental essence of what we're talking about with beauty here. What I would suggest then, what I would posit to you in response to that would be our collective agreement upon things that are beautiful today is most likely premised, like you were saying about the desert and the forest. Which one would you prefer? The desert being less beautiful than the forest, and then we started talking about, well, it depends on where you grew up or whatever. The reason why I get into that, though, is because it sounds to me like there is a utility, or there was a utility or an evolutionary benefit to to human beings or our species to agree on certain things as beauty, but those things can deviate to some degree. Like every culture has drums, but the shape of the drum and the sound of the drum and the common traditional rhythms are always different, right? Or like singing, like you'll hear absolutely different singing in India than you'll hear in Canada.
Or like from the Native Americans.
Yeah.
But all of them you can find, like all of them
But
you
that's
can
sort of
find.
where I get that it's learned, because it's so much of it's culturally influenced how
Right.
we perceive it. But like you said, you can go to another culture and still it's familiar. The beauty
It's familiar,
is still
and you can
there.
still see the beauty in it.
Or like
So
the
like,
ornateness of cathedrals and temples and things like that, even up in like the Tibetan plateau where they've been
yeah,
isolated for eons, basically.
they're still trying to figure out. They're trying to come to terms with the same thing that the rest of us are trying to come to terms with, is let's make this beautiful, and that's the
So what
goal
makes
that all
things
these.
like, oh, sorry.
Well, that's the goal that all these people are trying to do. Let's make, okay, we can make a disgusting, cheap, like quick city, or we could put some effort into it and make something beautiful. Because the reality is that when we make something beautiful, we like living there. And this comes down to something as simple, like as mundane as like broken windows theory, where if you could live in a neighborhood just, well, I have shelter, I have water, I have food, I have everything I need to survive. Well, you're a human. Survival isn't really enough. And when you could live in a neighborhood with broken windows, or you could go around fixing things and cleaning things up. Now, if a neighborhood has broken windows, people are going to be less likely to live there. Things are going to get worse. I don't remember whose this was, but it's famous enough by now. Where neighborhoods that have broken like shop windows just on this, like as you drive by, people aren't going to go there, and people are going to gravitate towards areas that are attractive. There's more trees, it's cleaner, it's with houses or something that people put effort into. Yeah, but like the same thing is that if you go to a neighborhood where the people take time out of their day, out of their life, to beautify their little corner of it, that make their house a cute little spot in the world. They plant a tree there, they trim the bushes, or they plant flowers around it, and they do it in a way that evokes the beauty of that yard. You walk through there and be like, wow, this is a really nice neighborhood. I want to live here too. I want to be in a place where there's beauty. That's what we want. We want to be in a place where there is beauty. And this is where we are dropping the ball, essentially, is because if you have something, if you have excellence, or arete, which is literally the root word for art, like it's pretty obvious, but arete in Greek meaning excellence, which is art being excellence at doing whatever you're doing. So this is my art, this is my craft. There's art in baking because I want to eat your stuff. The more beautiful it is, in flavor, not just in visual or auditory, I want to eat it more. I want to go to an art gallery which has the most beautiful paintings. I want to go to a symphony that plays the symphonies the most beautifully, with the most excellence. And actually, Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra is really good for that. Just shouting out there.
Yeah, good shout out, actually. That and the WAG too.
Yeah, they do
the
a good
art
job.
Gallery.
Yeah. But yeah, these things that we gravitate towards. And I feel like we've got this conceit in our society that, you don't need beauty to survive. You don't need beauty, and, or you have this other conceit that like, oh, beauty is just an institution that's thrust upon us by, old white men or something, or that's thrust upon us by imperialism or whatever. And it's just, well, they want to enforce their specific aesthetic. It's like, if they wanted to enforce, if there was a force enforcing aesthetic, why does everyone in Canada eat sushi? Sushi is beautiful when it's made right. And if you go to a cheap sushi place, it's just like, this might as well be cheap anything. But like a good sushi joint, you get it comes to you on your plate and you're like, that's nice, and you eat it and you're just like, oh, that's also nice. And then
They
you
are kind
finish.
of doing that though now, eh? Like houses are being built in big development sections, and all the houses in those sections all look the same. Condos all have rules about like what you can put in your windows so that every condo unit looks the same. It's almost like they're gravitating towards that just economically without even thinking of it.
Yeah, so what I did on my
Abandoning
balcony
beauty, I mean.
what I did on my balcony in Edmonton here when I lived in my last place, because it was a drab like 1960s stick it up thing, but I just turned my balcony into this lush garden with plants hanging off of it all over the place. People were like, oh, that's really nice. And I'm like, yeah, you can do this too. I literally just put them in the sun and water them all day and like tend to them. It's literally just this zen that I do, and it creates beauty in my neighborhood, makes everything nicer. Why don't you do this? And like, pretty soon, like, and I wasn't saying that like, a jerk, like I just said. I was like talking with the neighbors and like, oh, and they were saying, oh, I got some flowers too, look at that.
Yeah,
And
legit
pretty
question.
soon,
If you like it, why don't you do it?
right, what's holding you back?
Mhm.
And I was creating a small pocket of beauty. I was making beautiful what I could with my two hands. And this kind of, I guess, like, I've been doing this for a while. I've had a garden on my balcony for years and years whenever I get a balcony. And when I was living in Winnipeg, but I don't know. This is,
So to what purpose or what end are people abandoning beauty for? Like
expediency, utility, and like not like, but like they think they're doing it for utility, because like utility being that which creates the most good but then they're replacing the word good with profit or time.
I accept that a bunch of people probably think they're doing it for that reason, but given that we know that looking after plants is good for your mental health, and it's good for the air, it's good for your digestion, it's cheaper to grow food than it is to buy food, like
cuts down on like air conditioning costs in the summer.
Yeah, knowing like all the tangible benefits to just putting water in a pot once every 3 days and leaving it outside or by your window. Like I don't really understand why people would abandon beauty from their life if there are nothing but all these extraneous benefits from it.
Right. They're just thinking in terms of, base utility, and they don't realize that adding beauty into their lives makes you feel richer. If you have a plant in your apartment, that plant for some reason makes your apartment better. If you have a tree in your yard, for some reason you just feel richer, because trees are things that you build tenements and you can sell these cheap tenements to people, and they can just cheap housing. But like, it's not the government's job to just put up cheap housing. It's the government's job to plant trees around there. So the poor people don't
disagree with you, but we'll
hear me. No, hear me out. Like it's like, you can, I'm not finished my thought there. It's not the government's job to put up, or like even a company's job to just put up cheap housing. Like, just like, here's some shacks, go live in them. It's like, you can it's not really about who's putting it up. It's more about the fact that here you're essentially saying to these people who don't have anything, here's a shack, you piece of shit. And it's demeaning, because we say, well, you have everything you need. You have food, water, shelter. Like, what more do you want? It's like, well, no, they're miserable because there's not a tree within like 300 meters of their apartment. Plant some trees. Like, make a park. And to some extent we do this in our society, but we're not perfect at it. We put green spaces and stuff, but the ones downtown Winnipeg are all kind of like, look, there's grass, we did it, victory. It's like, come on, that's not enough. You can improve the life of people immensely by giving them beauty outside their doorstep. And it's not that much of an expense, because we think that, oh, well, we've done it. We've built 3 million, like, you see those like apartment blocks in China or in like the Soviet Union or something like that. And they gave them a roof, but they didn't, that's all they gave them. And I'm not saying give people stuff for free, but I'm saying we should be insisting on elements of beauty in it. And this shows up even in our nicer homes now. You see the nicer homes, they look like Lego. They look like they're Lego blocks. And it's like, oh, but it's what's on the inside. It's like, yeah, but you have to live there. You have this thing that's got windows on it. It looks like it's just rectangular. There's no beauty to it. There's no flourish to it. Well, it's cheaper that way. It's like they're rich. They can afford the flourish. Like this is in the nice part of town. Like I don't know.
I'm sorry. I completely disagree with you there.
What do you disagree on?
I don't think that housing people is less important than aesthetic of what people aren't upset because they don't have trees in front of their front door. I think they're upset because they're sleeping outside.
I know. No, I'm not trying to solve poverty here.
No, I know.
Let's not get that. I'm not advocating for something.
What I'm saying is
I'm saying that people's lives will be improved. Like why are we I don't know. In our society, we tend to only focus on the people that don't have, but like I'm talking about the entirety of society here, not just the poor.
Yeah, but I don't think beauty materially affects people's ability to feed and raise their children. I don't think it has that effect on people.
Not directly. No, like it's not going to be like, but
if you can't find it in a tree outside your front door, there's still like the internet. You can look at pictures of trees. You could never do that before in all of human history. Just look up anywhere on the world and take a look at the Grand Canyon. Or like GoPros, you can get bird's eye views of all kinds of disgusting things, but that can be beautiful just from having a perspective you wouldn't otherwise be awarded. I think it's way more important to address the opportunities available to people to bring art into their lives in any shape and form. I don't think it's at all necessary to beautify a settlement or a residence to make people feel any richer or better in their life.
Well,
mind you, I
don't think that it's the job of the government to do the beautifying either. I think it's the job of the people living there to beautify it.
Yeah. I mean, that's different. I
think we should be encouraging people to.
I wasn't trying to make this a political argument, though. But what I'm saying is, I think there are way more valuable and useful and pertinent places to apply our pursuit of beauty than, strictly speaking, through aesthetic, like visual.
I know, but like I think the thing is that we can't just give people. Beauty isn't something that you can just inject once a day into somebody. It has to be something that is there constantly in your life, or you can go to at any time, but it has to be something that's present. You can't just give someone a VR device and then for a half hour a day they just look at pictures of a forest or space or something, or because like if that was the case, then everyone who's on the internet looking at pictures of girls or something would be like, I'm a connoisseur. But like okay, that was an extreme example, but
I think some people are like that. Like, again, that's the subjectivity component to this whole thing, is that some people like me could be completely satisfied with never putting anything on their walls in their apartments or on their balcony, and I just did music all the time. It was guitar, it was drumming, it was poetry, it was artwork, it was
so you're surrounding yourself in excuse me, you're surrounding yourself in the aesthetic that you are interested in.
But that's what's beautiful to me. Like that's what beautifies my environment. If I came over
to your place and set up a fountain in the front yard, and and like trimmed your hedges, and got your garden all set up, and then just left sneaky like going ha ha ha, and you walked out the front door, and being like, well, how would you react to that? It's like, oh no, someone made my yard beautiful. What the heck is there a fountain doing there?
Yeah, honestly, it makes me uneasy, because then I'm going to start worrying about like what's sitting in the fountain. Like, is it a mosquito pond? Now do I have to worry about my windows being left open? Is there going to be bees all over the place?
New example.
What I'm getting at is, though,
but if I came over to your place and said, or if you hired me saying, okay, I don't know anything about physical beauty, I care about audio beauty. Well, I'm kind of the same way in certain aspects, but not in that way. We'll get into that. And you said, okay, make my yard beautiful because I know, and all of a sudden you have this beautiful yard, and then it makes your neighborhood slightly more beautiful. Like I'm definitely a literary guy. I tend to look for beauty in words. And I like music, but I definitely do not default to music. But I also do like going and hiking and stuff like that. So that's generally where I find it. We all find it in different spots. But if we enhance the beauty of the things that, like, I think this is kind of like a Jordan B. Peterson argument. If we all kind of put some effort into our little corner or our little interested corner of the universe that we want to make beautiful, then the more, and the world itself will become, the human world itself will become more beautiful as a result. All of us focusing on this aspect that we've almost rejected in the last 100 years, that is beauty. We need to, I think what I'm arguing is that we need to realize that beauty, though not directly, it's not going to feed you, but it is vitally important aspect or property of our lives that we can't ignore. And, we can't just focus on utility.
Yeah, I wasn't really trying to just focus on utility, but what I'm getting at sort of is coming back to the idea that we were discussing about there being truth to beauty. Mm-hmm. And I still can't sort of get my head around the fact that somebody else's version of beauty being imposed onto my environment or my community isn't my beauty. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
so there are some things that we consider universally beautiful, like harmonic scales. Everybody, no matter what instrument you play, a harmonic scale is a harmonic scale, and everybody can identify, a flat F or whatever. If something just sounds off when you're trying to go through tones or semitones and whatever.
This is why I'm critical of art, because I know exactly that feeling you're talking about when they put out, like, University of Manitoba is really bad for this. They have just, if you go there, there's just shapes out in the middle of nowhere, and it's just like, it's art. Look, we created beautiful. And it's like, this is beautiful.
It's just it's trying to tell us that they're artists.
Yeah, exactly. But then you look at a painting and everyone walks by it going like, this is beautiful. And some people will be like, I guess that's okay. Like, we don't have to plaster that painting on the side of every building. Mm-hmm. I'm just imagining a city with that textured the side of every building. But the truth of it is that if I defined nature as being true. We living in nature. And so the more in accord with nature you are, the more beautiful it is. So I promise I'm going to bring it back around to your point. But now a gymnast, like I said, is something. Where are my notes? These are my notes? Yeah. So we find our bodies to be, the human body can be beautiful, right? So I'm just going to assume yes. So we find someone who is very much, closer to what we think a beautiful person is. Now, the thing is that, a beautiful woman or a beautiful man, they have a lot of different qualities. You can find very high beauty in different forms of humanity, which is kind of the neat part of humanity. It's like there's beauty in like Asian people and in Indian people and in white people and in black people. You can find it, but in every one of those groups, in the larger group of humanity, there are people that don't display as much beauty as certain individuals that would, like a leper, they're missing a hand or something, or they are, they've got pustules all over, or they've, got plague marks or something, but there is and men are definitely considered beautiful in different ways than women are. So there's definitely a universality there. There's something there that makes us see things, that tends to regard certain people as more beautiful than others. And this is definitely changed by taste. But if you look at someone with, leprosy, and find them sexually appealing, I don't believe you. That's just like, I think you're lying to me. But I can understand the beauty of care, in that Mother Teresa style, but that isn't sexual attraction. I'm not going to find that, physically appealing. I'm not going to find that physically beautiful. And when it comes to this, I think that's the interaction of taste and the objective reality of our incarnation as people within the universe. Now, the universe, again, okay, going back, universe is nature. Nature is truth, because nature is what it is objectively. Deal with it. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying it's because it's governed by the reality and the truth that is mathematics and science and physics and all that stuff that we've used science, to find out these truths about our reality. And because we're human, we're going to see things in certain ways. And ugly people, unfortunately, are ugly. And there's no getting around that. Ugly art is ugly. And just because you tell me it's beautiful won't make it beautiful. The truth of it comes in when it doesn't have to be told. It's kind of like, if you have to tell me that you are powerful, then you have no power. If you have to tell me that, if a woman has to say she's a beautiful woman, she's not. It's evident in what it is. It doesn't have to be argued for. I don't have to tell you that a forest vista is beautiful. Now, in counter to my point is, I guess, something like photography, where I've seen photographers and they tend to go around with their cameras and they're kind of annoying, but they do tend to do some interesting things, because they will go around and they'll go into an industrial sector and wander around with their camera and play with the light and the color and everything in such a certain way. And they'll take a picture of a chain link fence or something stupid like that. And then they'll present it in a way and it'd be like, I like looking at this and I hate it, but I love looking at this because you made this beautiful. Now, it's not the chain link fence itself that's beautiful. It's the presentation of the lines and the geometry and all that stuff that we don't need to pay attention to, kind of like explaining a joke ruins the comedy. And that's... So to answer your point, I think I did, but
not really.
What was your point? I was coming to it.
Subjectivity and objectivity, and people's imposing their subjective views of beauty for my own betterment, as if it's good universally for everybody.
Right. So what I'm getting to is the fact that some people's opinions of subjective beauty are wrong. You can be wrong about this. It's not, everyone's opinion is valid. No.
But didn't you just say an ugly person is an ugly person? Isn't that your subjective belief of their beauty?
Yes, but I'm not wrong. Ugly is ugly.
I disagree with you. I think ugly people can be beautiful.
They can be, but it won't be on that level. You're not, you can't convince me that,
I don't find elderly people sexy, but I think there's something very beautiful about age and wisdom.
Oh, no.
Because there's a natural progression.
Wisdom is beautiful on that. And I think that's the thing. You have to...
But I wouldn't conjecture that I know that as a fact. I would conjecture that I have an opinion on it. I can opine on something with a feeling or a belief or a taste.
I'm not going to look at a tree as a sexual object. I'm going to look at it as a part of nature.
But you agree there are ugly trees out there, right?
Yeah. Now, this comes back to that idea of arete. They are excellent at being what they are. A tree, like a beautiful tree, is a tree that's lush and strong. But if you get this cankerous thing or a Joshua tree, I can guess you can get a beautiful thing that is good at being a Joshua tree. But as when you put it through the lens of tree, then it's just and I'm not arguing platonics here. I don't want to get into that because that's just a hole that'll take us down. Well, what if does that mean there's a perfect tree? No. There, I put that to rest. There's no perfect human. There's no perfect tree. There's no perfect universe. Things just are the way they are. Now, some things just have more of that. Now, there's beauty to the elderly in the fact that they have that experience in itself, and that wisdom has turned them into, it's changed their excellence into something else. And we have to find the beauty using a different lens. And I think that's one of the things, is that we're trying to use the same lens that we use for, art and, sexuality, to gauge beauty on things that you really do need a different lens for. So like, again, you watch a hockey game and you can find beauty there if it's well played. Otherwise it's just like, they can't pass the puck. But if you are looking at through the realm of, these people are at the height of their game, the movement, the speed, the grace, there's beauty there. And I think that's where it comes to, is that this idea is, I think my idea, if I wanted to define and wrap it up, I don't know if I want to wrap it up.
Well, before you wrap up, I'd just like to make comments on that.
Yeah. So let me just say this, is that this is not, so when I say beauty is truth, what I'm saying is the truth is the objective aspect of reality. Beauty of the thing, being the arete, is that aspect of excellence that makes us encounter it and provides that feeling of beauty, that aspect of it, that nuministic feeling that we have in encountering something of that nature. Now, because it can be encountered in anything, it must be looked at on its own merit. And I think that's what I'm getting at.
All right. And I guess just as a response to what you were going over there, arete to me has several different meanings, and a lot of the time in philosophy it's referred to more as a moral virtue type of thing, a beauty of abstraction, which is obviously where my mind generally tends to gravitate, as you can tell from listening or watching enough of our episodes. But the reason why I wanted to point that out isn't specifically it's not a correction or anything like that. I just wanted to mention that even in the description and in the definitions proposed, obviously not saying that you know everything or that you're right, but in the definition proposed, I would suggest that there's also flexibility within in terms of of itself being defined. But other things like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, since you're into literacy, that basically that whole Victor Hugo epic was about beauty and misinterpretation and allocation of beauty.
Yes.
So I don't quite see how that coincides with the idea that there are universal beauty, which you've already described. So I'm just speaking in response here. Give me a second. I'm not done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me take notes then.
Yeah, take notes. So I would suggest that in the artwork that we would both agree is beautiful, there is a story about how beauty is subjective, and how you can find beauty through ugliness, and it's more beautiful specifically because of how ugly its derivative is. That's just one comment. The other would be Spinoza, for instance. Spinoza's version of atheism sort of portends toward panpsychism, where the universe itself is God, which you kind of sort of touched on briefly from the beginning of the show here.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that an idea of that magnitude, its magnificence alone, is sufficient to constitute beauty. Like, even wrong ideas or fallacious aesthetics or broken materials or like a rotten old bench has beauty and character to it. That's sort of what we mean by rustic appearance or rustic look. And I
Right.
liken that to the neighborhoods that I generally like to live in are always sort of colloquially referred to as the ghettos of cities. Like New West and Vancouver is like where my heart is, New Westminster. I love White Ave in Edmonton, which you obviously didn't like as nearly as much as I did.
White Ave died.
Yeah, I liked it though, like Osborne. Osborne in Winnipeg like, is like that, or Denman.
Osborne, White Ave has like 30 closed businesses on it right now. It literally died.
It's a community though, to me. Like, that's how I grew up, was hanging out on street corners and sitting on curbs and eating out of a pizza box just outside. Like, to me, that's family, it's close-knit, it's community, and that to me is beautiful. I'd rather live in a divey area where I know all the homeless people and, you know, I toss them half a sandwich on my way home to work here and there. I'd much prefer that than a place that's perfectly clean and they shrugged everybody off so that we can't see them, so they're all hiding under bridges and stuff. Like, I'd rather have broken glass in my neighborhood. If there's crime in my neighborhood, I should be trying to fix it. I want to know about it. So, like, to me, it's beautiful to have an environment that's honest and true, in the sense that the crime's not hidden. So broken glass to me signifies there's something I need to fix in my own neighborhood. And it sort of motivates me to take action. Where everything was just cleaned up and fixed and painted over and glossed over. They just pretend it wasn't there. They'd pretend people aren't homeless and that there is no crime. And yeah, so those are sort of the
my thought is that broken glass, how do I put this? I'm not going to worship rot at all, ever. And I think that you do make a good point. An Apple store and Apple products have no beauty in them. They're too clean. They have no
je ne sais quoi.
There's no soul to it. It's like, I don't know. It feels like a way too science sterile. It feels like a hospital. You know, it's too sterile. And now a hospital has to function like that because, you know, you can't just be like, oh, look, we put a flourish on it. And it's just like, oh, great. That's a bacteria. That's like bacterial form constantly in that and kill everybody because this is a surgery room. Please get that out of here. We need to be able to sanitize this. It doesn't need to be beautiful because we need functionality over beauty in that situation. But I think what we're conflating is weathered with broken. Now I understand, okay, the Japanese notion of whatever, where you can, you know, find beauty in the broken thing, but yes, but I'm not going to just, if there's nothing, okay, I think part of it is that the Apple aesthetic is not what I'm advocating for, because I'm saying find your own beauty, and it'll just probably end up being, and if it's beautiful, you'll probably end up having a lot of other people find it's beautiful.
But it's like a shipwreck, though. There's wabi-sabi. There's something beautiful to degradation and rot and decay itself, because it's emblematic of time and life. And
right. So, but the thing is that there's a difference between weathered and lived in and a slum. I don't.
But a slum to me makes me feel the same as a really good painting or a movie that makes you cry. Right? Not everything has to make you happy and smile. A slum to me is people banding together trying to survive. You know what I mean? Like, it's part of human essence.
If they're actually banding together to trying to survive, then that's not a slum. Then that's a
nobody voluntarily moves to the slum. They live there because they have.
It's like, oh, it's so beautiful. No, that's why they don't go there, because it's not. But the thing is that if a community was a slum and is banding together to make it better, then that's not a slum. That's a community that's growing, that's becoming more healthy, and they will keep their scars. Now, this is kind of that's kind of the thing, is like um, a man with scars can still be considered beautiful. It's like that weird, like you see in like China and Japan and Korea, where they have like these idols where they're like these perfectly like seemingly photoshopped individuals, and they just pose and they have no personality, and like, look at the beauty of these people, and it's like there is no beauty there. It's just as sterile as an Apple store, because a there's a beauty, and I think this is what you're trying to get at. There's a beauty in a woman who has cracked hands. There's a
And
beauty.
overweight and a unibrow and hair coming out of her
Let's
ears.
not get too far.
No, I'm serious. If that was my daughter, I would find her beautiful. And that's the subjective element to it.
Okay, but there's a balance here. There's a woman with strong arms and cracked hands because she's been, working, or a man with, like I've got scars on my head, but like I'm not gonna, but like a man that has, calloused hands from work. Well, these aren't the most beautiful hands, but they are, because your hands are made for working. They're not, I'm not going to use it because it could be broken. Now, the thing about Quasimodo, I read that a bit differently, because the Quasimodo was intentionally this ugly thing, and he was almost irredeemable, because the focus of the story was on the cathedral itself rather than the characters. Now, the characters represented aspects of French life. I think as Esmeralda, yeah. So she was an object of beauty in the story. She was this almost this rough beauty. She had this, the type of
she's juxtaposed with him, basically.
Right.
So everything he's not.
But she's also juxtaposed with a lot of the city, because she's an outsider. She is not just a French beauty; she's a Catalan. She's an exotic beauty in Paris. So, why did I think it was in Marseille? Anyway, she probably went through Marseille to get through Paris. But anyway, she was a Catalan, which means, darker Spanish probably. So she's got this exotic beauty about her, which is not what everyone but like the nobility, the noble guy, I can't remember his name, I read it so long ago. He found her beautiful because she was like, imagine that exotic beauty in your head. That's Esmeralda. That's what she's supposed to be, whatever you have in your head there. Voluptuous, dark. Yeah. Don't imagine the Disney cartoon. Imagine what's you would have in your head for an exotic beauty. That's what she's supposed to be.
The theme, though, of the book and the story was to talk about the cathedral's gargantuan,
right. But edifice. The cathedral was a thing of time. It wasn't perfect. It had weathering. It
right.
had gone through it.
It was both the beauty of Esmeralda and it was the ugliness of Quasimodo. That was the whole point of having those two characters.
You wouldn't want one of those in alone. You wouldn't want just Quasimodo, and you wouldn't want just Esmeralda. You want this thing to come together to it, because like I've got, I don't know, like you see, you don't want a man that's too soft, but you don't want him to be just scar tissue. You want someone who has been able to balance that in their life, and that's. But the same with a woman. You want a woman who's like can be that feminine, but you also want a woman who can be like roll up her sleeves and like get her hands dirty.
No, but you want a woman like that. That's not the same thing as it being beautiful to anybody else. That's what I'm getting at. Okay. Your subjective experience of beauty is clouding your view of beauty in other people's subjective experiences. That's sort of what I'm contesting about your approach.
I'm not advocating for a specific.
You said ugly people are ugly, and
because they are.
I don't think that's even possible, because I think every parent thinks their child is not ugly.
But the thing is that if you don't have certain aspects of beauty, that's not a bad thing.
They can just be different. It doesn't mean that you have none. You can just have different views.
And I think this is where we kind of finally come to the virtue. I've been wanting to get to this for a while. So, yay. So I'm not saying that because you're ugly or because you were overweight or anything like that you don't have virtue. The virtue is in the creation of beauty and maybe even the celebration of it. So just because you are, I don't know, someone may think that you are not their type or something, or because you're unattractive or you're goofy looking or whatever. You can perform beauty in more than one way. And that's the virtue of beauty, is that you can contribute beauty to this society, to all society, to every society, through your actions. And I think the rejection of that, the rejection of beauty in itself is the sin. And that's kind of what I'm railing against, is that beautiful things are beautiful, and we can say they are and agree that they are. But I think if we reject beauty in its entirety, that's where that's where the danger lies. And like, you can find beauty in anything, yes, but that doesn't mean everything has every element of beauty in it. So I think that's what I'm getting at, is that yes, there are certain things like I don't find this jar here particularly beautiful, but I like what I can do with the things in the jar. That's the beauty of it. And I'm using, I guess, this act of virtue is me looking at this object here on my desk and trying to find some aspect of beauty in it. And if I find none, well, what can I do to make it beautiful? What can I do to enhance maybe I can give it some beauty? And that's something that we can do with
I don't think that's an exclusive position to be in. Like, not recognizing beauty and adding your own version of beauty to something aren't mutually exclusive. Something can already be beautiful. You can even make it less beautiful if you want.
Yeah.
And just because you believe yourself that putting a bow and a smiley face on everything makes everything look beautiful, even if it doesn't mean that to everyone else, to you, it's got meaning, because subjective experience matters. Where subjective experience matters, there can't be any truth. There can only be opinion.
But with truth, opinions can be wrong, though. And like, I remember that's
the difference between truth and opinion.
Right. And I think part of it is that you have to put work into beauty, because it's not something that comes easy.
But isn't that just your subjective interpretation of beauty?
Yeah,
that you have to this or you can't that?
No, because you can say that about any aspect of, like, oh, my hand hurts. Well, that's just your objective opinion or subjective opinion. I'm like, I guess.
No, because pain is only relatable to subjective experience. That is defined by experience. That's
right.
The same
so
beauty.
What I'm saying is that because
pain only exists when it's felt. It has to be felt to be painful, right?
Because of entropy, things tend to go towards a more stable state, and things fall apart. And if you create something beautiful, or if you have something beautiful, or if you find something beautiful, then you can revel in its beauty. But if you want to create something beautiful, art isn't a simple process. Art is not a thing you can just do. You have to put thought and effort into it to create art. Whatever you think is beautiful, it takes effort to do that. You can accidentally create beauty, I suppose, but generally, if you want to intentionally create beauty, you have to put work in. And I think when we just do a little thing, it's not as effective as, say, someone who spends 5 years studying architecture and puts up a building and says, this is my idea of beauty. And some people will be like, yeah, it's a nice building. And it takes a lot of effort, and a lot of people have to put that in. Now, aside from the actual construction of it, the effort it takes to make it just so in your mind is extensive. And I think we can't just go around willy-nilly, because it takes this form of artistry. It takes skill, and it takes practice to create beauty. And I think people just going around sticking stickers on the side of buildings willy-nilly doesn't create beauty. It creates a clutter, unless you've, hold on, I didn't put these around just to sell drugs. I'm doing this intentionally, and okay, we'll give you a benefit of the doubt. And after a while, it's like, okay, this is interesting. If you do something with some forethought, and I think that's
because that's essentially the philosophy behind graffiti art, eh? It's to force people to look at things they wouldn't otherwise look at, and it's a distorted view or an impressionist view of something that we all recognize as familiar. But that type of familiarity and unfamiliarity is where we often find the beauty in things. Like a Picasso isn't beautiful because it's accurate. A Picasso is beautiful because it is abstract.
Right.
And it twists your brain and your eyes looking at it. But the thing about Picasso's was nobody saw him as a beautiful artist until after he died, long after he died.
Well, because they finally figured, and this goes back to when I was talking about like me not being able to see math, they were finally able to see it. It took them a while to look at it and be like, eh.
And along that same vein, if somebody puts up a bunch of stickers and it looks like an eyesore to everyone else in the world, how do we know as a truth that it's not us that fail to see the beauty in their actions? That's what I'm getting at. Because even if we all agree, we could all be wrong.
Well, because we can say that about anything. Like I can just say, well, I can just determine that I find I don't know, I like this paint chip here. And, I can just argue ad nauseum that, well, it's just my subjective opinion. I find it beautiful. You need to institute it, blah, blah, blah. And I don't.
But why is that less valid? I don't get that. Like, how is that beautiful thing less beautiful or more beautiful than your idea of something that's beautiful?
Because I think there is an aspect of universality to beauty in it, and that where was I going with this? Well, like take the graffiti artist, for example, because I've been wanting to, you kind of made a point there and moved on. Subjectively, I don't like graffiti art, but I understand that I recognize that there's that's not all graffiti artists are equal. And there's a few that I've seen that I understand that they put time, effort, and love into, there's an aspect that we do need to talk about, into the practice of their art that others didn't. Now I've seen a lot of graffiti that's just done in anger or done in mere opposition with no intention to create beauty. But you get someone, there's a couple on in downtown Winnipeg that are in the exchange that are done really well. And I hate that they graffiti over them, because some of them they just will take it down and then graffiti over it. Okay, and graffiti is the noun for the art type, not, they're doing it out of spite or something.
I think it's a verb too.
Yeah, well, I'm using it as a noun in this case. So you have this art that they put up, and I think maybe the transitory nature of that is part of that medium. But
that's very Buddhist too. Washing away the mandalas. It's very much like graffiti art getting covered up by paint.
Right. But yeah, and it does bring me down the back lane a bit to look at it and, walk by it, and people will take pictures in front of it because it's well done, because there's something in there that expresses a truth. And that's it. That's all there is to it. There's something in there that expresses truth to a variety of people. Now, I'm generally of the type that'll say, if you have an opinion and everyone else doesn't agree with you, you stick to your opinion, and society and the debate itself will prove one or the other side wrong or right. And, history will decide the truth of the matter. But when it comes to art, when it comes to not just art, but like, you can make your own art, but if you are making it in such a public sphere, and you do have to take humanity into account, and you can't just I guess I'm saying is that don't just act selfishly when it comes to art, unless you're
We're
making
not
it in your
talking
own
about
house.
destruction of property. We're talking about perception of beauty, though.
No, I'm not talking about destruction of property either. If you put out a giant phallus on the lawn and you think it's beautiful, great, get it out of there. If you're my neighbor, I might do some art of my own to take it down.
Unless you're a 6th century Roman, in which case everybody would love it.
Oh yeah. Now,
that's where I'm getting at. It's subjective and culturally significant and how people are raised. And it's so much of it is ingrained through our experience and our interpretation of the artwork that it's impossible to suggest that there's truth underlying the beauty. There's more to say that the beauty relates to truth, but it's not to say that beauty is caused by truth.
Now, I'm kind of arguing that, that our culture, that truth itself isn't, I'm arguing pretty explicitly that truth is not culturally constructed. That, well, math wouldn't work, but essentially, but that doesn't mean that we can't explore it. That doesn't mean that like this is beauty and this is not. No, we have no idea what kind of art is going to come out and what kind of things that we're going to find beautiful in the thing. But as a society, we are also allowed to reject art as, you know, being either not good enough or being, not worthy. That's what we do as a society, is that cultural construction, or not that cultural influence also has a objective influence, but we as a society will almost unconsciously say, oh, we like this and we don't. But that's also, we in our society, in like modern society, we let people experiment to get new things, to find new beauties and to find new truth, because we don't know what those objective truths of beauty are. And that's why we need to explore these individual beauties and let them do their thing. But just like free speech, they have to deal with the criticism or the adoration, you know? Is that even, it's like you make something and it's like everyone loves it, and you're like, I don't know why everyone loves it. This is just something I like. It's like, well, you accidentally hit on something that everyone loves. Congratulations, you're famous and rich. But we don't know. And we also don't know what's going to work either, because we are trying to explore that. So when someone makes something and everyone's like, that's terrible, it's ugly, it's crap, it's terrible, oh, I hate it. And then like 30 years later, everyone's like Picasso, they're like, genius, absolute genius. That, or I've been looking at this for 5 hours and I don't know why. It just, sometimes things come before their time. Some things come after their time. We are constantly exploring. And that's, I'm not rejecting, I'm not rejecting other people's subjective experience or subjective taste. Now, taste is important because that's where the individual comes in. And
that's what I mean by opinion, though, is taste.
Yeah, but preference. I don't think taste and preference are
well, is red more beautiful than green?
Depends on how you use them.
No, it depends is the answer.
Yeah,
depends on who you are, where you are, in what context, what shade.
Right, but I don't
reds
think
and pretty reds.
I don't think you can make up your own. I think, yes, you can have your own personal opinions and stuff, but I don't think that your own tastes are going to be you're going to have everyone's going to have some weird things that they like, and everyone's going to like different things, but no one's going to like
to me, that just seems like evidence that it is culturally created and manifests through our society as a group of individuals. It's whatever we as an aggregate on average enjoy, that's what we consider beautiful. Not because it's more or less true. It's just we're wired to bend towards certain things. So
Right.
like if enough people think that Michael Jackson or Britney Spears are phenomenal musicians, regardless of whether I like them or appreciate their music at all, no matter how much you teach me about their music, I just won't appreciate it the same way as Tech Nine. Like, it's just personality differences. I fixate on things like taste and flavor and variety more than I fixate on perfection or sublime excellence. I'd much
Right.
prefer to taste a bunch of different meals that none of which are delicious or perfect or Red Seal Chef. I would rather have 10 varieties than 10 of the same perfect thing. Because to me, that
Right.
variety is more beautiful than the perfect thing in itself. But that's not to say that I would conjecture outwardly that everyone should believe that, because I don't think it's even possible to suggest that my opinions on aesthetic are any more or less valid than somebody else's, insofar as they're all preferential and subjective. And I can only be subjective about something that's strictly preferential. And that to me suggests that there isn't any truth to it whatsoever, and that it is entirely culturally designed.
Right.
Because
So,
like we wouldn't even be having this conversation or this channel if we weren't culturally Canadian. If we were raised as Chinese people not to think about our government or outside of the box, for lack of a better trope, I couldn't think of anything less trite. But if we were from other nations and raised in different cultures, we would not be having this YouTube conversation, over 22 episodes and going strong now.
oh yeah. So my thought is that there's also something for everybody, and I'm not dictating that you like certain things. I'm saying that there are things that we will inherently, that given our exploration, we will tend towards. And I don't. Now, if there's no truth, then I could just light people on fire and call it art and say, I find this beautiful.
You could, but we'd have to lock you up for the safety and security of everybody else.
Right, which implies that there is a truth. Pain bad. And
it could still be beautiful, even if it's bad.
Right. Now,
sex with strangers.
Now, there are... I'm not willing to, because if we reject truth, then I can do whatever I want, and I don't think that's the point. Because I
think there's beauty and goodness, though, so you wouldn't just do whatever you want.
And I think one of the things we're ignoring, and I've been wanting to get to this since I mentioned it in like offhand, is that the element of... Excuse me, please edit that out. But the element of love in all of this. We find now there's an aspect of I don't know, what do we call this? Grace, I would say, maybe even a godliness. But when we interact with people, we prefer to act. It's better when we act with people with an aspect of love between people. Be this caring, filial notions, romantic love, just general love of humanity, that kind of thing. You can make art for yourself, but you're still expressing love of a thing, or love of the process, or love of the aspect to yourself. And if it's available to others, depending on the form of art, then you're expressing your love to other people who are seeing it. So now if I wanted to express my love to somebody, I could just say, oh, I love you. but like that's almost shallow. It's like saying I'm sorry. It doesn't mean anything. You have to, actions are louder than words. So if I make, you get the trope of someone, writing a song for a girl, and he's expressing his love for her. So this is an act of beauty intended to express a notion. And I think that, now I'm just riffing here because I haven't actually thought about this aspect of it. And I think that part of it is actually important. There is that intentional aspect to it of expressing something that is in line with what you are feeling or what you are seeing or what you are experiencing. And that subjective interpretation through art of what you're feeling creates this art. And if you come close to that, the art gains an aspect of beauty and almost transcendence that you, in expressing your love in relation to something, creates something that is greater than the sum of its parts. A poem becomes a lyrical masterpiece. A lump of clay becomes, a statue. But whether it's just a statue or an object of beauty is up to how well you express that aspect of yourself. And this could end up being the aspect of horror, or any romantic notions, or relationship, or even a feeling of anxiety. The truth, the closer you get to the truth of the expression, makes that more real to the people because they can understand it better.
Well put. I think that's probably a good place to leave it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was getting. I hope we gave you guys enough to chew on. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. Definitely part of this came from a lot of people who are talking about beauty. I know Jordan B. Peterson's been saying, make things beautiful, see what happens, experiment with it. And
Lex Friedman always talks about, that's so beautiful, man. Just a shout out because I love the guy.
Yeah, he's with his he owns 18 of the same suit.
Just a Men in Black closet.
Yeah. He's cool in his own way. Yeah. So,
like, share, and subscribe. Show up. We got our RSS feed up. You can check the description for the link to it and get the audio only versions through your favorite podcast players. And
any preview? Any preview of what the people can expect next time?
One of the next coming up episodes we're going to be doing is on drugs, where we're going to try and get Megan back for discussion on that. In the next coming weeks, I'm not sure it'll be next time because I'll probably want to prepare a bit more for it, but I'd like to discuss the topic of the nature of time. Mm-hmm. And you did mention entropy, and we talked a bit about decay and order and disorder and chaos and all that. So I think time would be a really interesting topic to discuss, since it's close to everybody's heart but far from their tongues.
Yeah, we might do one on a follow-up to last week's, where we talk more about the intellectual aspect of ownership and stuff like that. As well. Yeah,
an extended episode on the EULAs.
Yeah. So, well, thank you guys for watching.
All right, thanks for the discussion too, Joda.
Yeah, no problem.
Ciao.